and welcome to this very special edition of Cash 22 1 month on. It's been a month since Narendra Modi shocked the nation and announced a demonetization of 500 and 1,000 rupee notes. That's the biggest monetary exercise done anywhere in the world. The objective was to get rid of black money, to clamp down on corruption, to also crack down on terror funding. The question though is, have any of those objectives been met? It was an exercise perhaps that was marred by poor execution. But is this short-term pain worth the long-term gain? Let's take it across to a very special panel that's joining us right here on ET Now to discuss and debate all of that. We've got Swaminathan Aiyar, our consulting editor, Bimal Jalan, former RBI governor, Sadanand Dhume, Western fellow at American Enterprise Institute. We've got Rajiv Kumar, senior fellow at CPR, RC Bhargava, chairman of Maruti Suzuki, and Rajiv Anand, executive director of Axis Bank. Thanks each one of you for being with us. Swami, let's start with you. 30 days done. The demonetization drive, or many people say the demonizing drive of cash has entered almost a month. What is your judgment? What is verdict, Swaminathan Aiyar, on this?
At this point, I can merely say that it is fairly finely balanced. It started off with everybody being Rara Modi because finally we got somebody willing to do something about corruption. Then the extent of the dislocation, the extent of the inconvenience, that is a negative day by day by day. The question then is, will there be a phase 3 where there is enough tax gathered or there's some creative accounting which enables a lot of money to directly be put into 250 million Jan Dhan accounts? And if that comes about, then even the fact that there has been this downturn and dislocation will be forgotten, because that particular thing on the one hand will look like a fantastic distribution to the people. Secondly, it will also be a very major fiscal stimulus which will be needed to overcome the demand contraction we are seeing right now. So I said, end of phase 1, we are now in phase 2. If this phase 2 continues bad for another 3 weeks, it will not look good for Modi. If the phase 3 comes right, he can bounce right back exactly on time for the Uttar Pradesh elections. I'm sure that's what he's banking on.
Indeed, that what is he backing on, because the perceived political gains out of this will have to and must at least outweigh the economic loss. Sadanand Dhume, do you agree with Swami? This is going to be a 3-phase exercise. It was Rara Modi to begin with, some amount of disillusionment now. But if with some creative accounting and tax that could be garnered out of this, if he can indeed put money into the hands of people, it will be phase 3 and it will be Rara Modi all over again.
I mean, I'd like to separate the economic analysis from the political analysis. Frankly, at this stage of the game, nobody knows how it's going to play out politically. Any result is plausible. It's quite possible that this will continue to remain quite popular with the people of Uttar Pradesh, and Mr. Modi will indeed gain a great political victory from this. It's also possible that the pain is going to continue, or the pain is going to ratchet up, and that his party will be defeated. But I think that political question, which we aren't in a position to predict right now, is quite separate from the policy question. And if you look at it in terms of a policy, it's very clear at this point, a month in, that this has been a failure.
All right, the verdict from you is from a policy point of view, which has been a failure. But Rajiv Kumar, is that your view as well? From a policy point of view, will this, I mean, what is your barometer of success or failure for the scheme? The idea of this whole exercise was to unearth black money, crack down on terror funding, dent corruption. At the end of the 30th day, what do you think we've really achieved?
I think very clearly, the terror funding has been stopped, has been eliminated. Some of the black currency, illegal currency holdings have been affected, but not as much as the government may have thought to begin with. But for me, the most important two aspects of this move have been: one, the folding in of the informal economy into the formal economy, so that if you get 11-12 lakh crores of money which is out there, it was being used for the parallel economy transactions, they have now been brought into the formal economy and will now henceforth leave a paper trail, as it were. And the second is that is the strongest signal that the government could have given, that for them the future flow of illegal incomes through whatever corruption means that people use are not going to be acceptable. So they have demonstrated a much lower tolerance level, and hopefully moving towards a zero tolerance level for black money and black economy to flourish in this country, and which I think is a very important signal. And the third, which has been an unintended consequences, but a very positive one, is the big push that we have now got towards moving moving towards the digital money in this country, which will take India into the front line of economies, handling and working with digital money.
All right, you're certainly more positive on this exercise, far more than Swaminathan Aiyar and Sadanand Dhume on the show, and it's good to have diverging views. But as a former RBI governor, Bimal Jalan, what is your view on this? Some say that a job well begun is perhaps half done, but we didn't really start very well on this one. Many hiccups along the way, and about 12 lakh crore is already back in the banking system. So what purpose has it really served by the end of the 30th day today?
No, I mean, so what you have said is, I mean, there is a lot of comments, etc. have already come. I mean, there is both positive and negative, but largely the feeling is that the timing as well as the fact that it was very sudden, I mean, didn't help very much in mopping up the black money. And it's more also that we are talking about stock and not the flow. I mean, it doesn't affect the flow of black money as much as needed to. But anyway, I mean, I think there are both sides to the coin, and by and large, that period is now likely to be over by the end of December. And let us hope the generation of black money will be affected. I mean, let's hope so. But then the other side of the coin, which you should also bear in mind, is that rupee, for example, internationally and globally, the rupee's reputation was very high, as you know. And once you demonetize, that reputation suffers. And of course, then also there has been a lot of talk about GDP, that there will be an impact on GDP, and that the worst affected people are probably in the rural area, and so on and so forth. So a lot has been written, and yeah. But by and large, I mean, I believe that it is, let it be over, and let's wait and watch what happens next, yeah.
Important there. Let's wait and watch what happens next and let it get over. But it's an important point that you're making, that has the reputation of the rupee suffered a blow there. But I'm going to come to the rupee and growth in just a bit from now. But I just want to get opening comments from all our panelists here. And Mr. Bhargava, you have your skin in the game as far as India's manufacturing is concerned, as far as demand is concerned, and that demand has indeed been dented. I'm just curious to know, what does somebody who sells in this market make of this whole exercise? Because the whole idea was to demonetize and let a lot of money be extinguished, which was considered to be illegitimate, which was considered to be black out there. But big chunk of that has returned to the system. Has this been then an exercise in futility?
See, if India is to become a modern economic power, it cannot be done if a large part of transactions in India are done on the basis of black money. Tax collections are therefore much lower than what they should be because of tax evasion, which results in the creation of black money. The black money is used to promote corruption at all levels, and moreover, terrorism and such activities are financed by both genuine and counterfeit notes. So I think all of that needs to be eliminated. The first attempt at doing this has been made now. All these years, the governments in power, the bureaucracy, everybody has been quiet about black money, done precious little about it. And of course, then nobody was criticized.
Rajiv Anand, you're the banker on the show and the head of retail banking at Axis Bank there. What is the situation on the ground at the 30th day? The queues don't seem to have gotten shorter. I'm still not getting enough 500 rupee notes as I go to ATMs and line out outside banks. What I'm getting is a 2000 rupee currency note. But from a banking point of view, from somebody who's perhaps keeping longer hours than you usually did, what's the situation on the ground like?
It has been 1 month, and quite a tumultuous 1 month that we've seen in branch banking. I think it's fair to say that what people in the branches have been delivering in these times has been quite stupendous. But having said that, I think like you rightly said, remember that about 11.5 lakh odd crores has gone out of the system, and approximately about 4.5 lakh crores has come back into the system, partly through 500 rupee notes, partly through 2000 rupee notes, and to some degree the 500 rupee notes. So I think clearly you can see that there is a gap in terms of the amount of money that's gone out of the system and the money that has been put into the system. I think we continue to work very closely with RBI, and RBI in turn is as they mentioned during the credit policy, is in a sense working overtime, and I do believe that we are seeing a bit of an increase in terms of the amount of 500 rupee notes that are coming through. And I think once that starts to happen, then the usability of the 2000 rupee note also improves, because you can get change, etc. So I do believe that as every day from here on, things will start to get better.
We're keeping our fingers crossed on that one as well. But Rajiv Kumar, the RBI, in its right or wrong wisdom, has lowered its fiscal year 17 growth forecast. Yes, on account of Q2 GDP being dented, but also on account of demonetization. Now, one doesn't know what the essential impact of that is going to be by the end of this exercise, but at the end of the 30th day, it is for everybody to see that consumption has been dented. I'm going to deal with consumption just next. But what is your assessment of impact on economic activity, impact on growth?
Whatever I say will have to be very speculative, because I don't think there is any firm estimate, any firm basis for coming up with a good estimate on the impact of GDP growth. Let me say that the very exaggerated figures given out by some agencies and individuals about the GDP growth being halved and so on, I mean, that's just I don't think that's just true, or that will be borne out. The talk about that the third and fourth quarter would have zero growth will also not be borne out, because let's remember that the formal economy, which does constitute more than 60%, 65% of the total GDP, has not been that badly impacted. The part of the economy which has been impacted has been the informal sector, where cash was a necessary ingredient of doing the business, and that's at best 20 to 30% of the formal economy. Now, there is a separate issue about the 40% or the 30% of that parallel economy which people have been estimating exists in India, but that was never in the official statistics in any case. So so if that has stopped, or if that has ceased, and if there is no activity there, it will not impact the official statistics. So therefore, my own at the best at the moment guess or hunch is that you will see a GDP growth of about what the RBI said, let's say 7%, which would be a 0.5% drop in the GDP, the cost of which is approximately, given that our GDP is 150 lakh crore, is about something like 75,000 crore to 1 lakh crore, which is well within the estimates of the benefits that might accrue to the government and to the economy. Apart from the fact that you now have a much larger GDP base, from which now henceforth the GDP will be calculated, so there might well be a once-off gain, as it were, in the GDP numbers and in the tax base going forward.
Mr. Bhargava, what is your own assessment of economic activity and growth? I mean, I don't have to quote figures here, but consumption is down. And I'm sure, I mean, we've all been reading reports of how automakers like yourselves are going to take a longer break than you usually do in the month of December. What is going to be the impact of this whole thing on growth, really?
See, I have no knowledge or data on the basis of which I can predict how much the GDP will get impacted by demonetization. I can only comment on the basis of what I read in the press. But the general assessment seems to be that yes, there will be a fall of GDP. Anything from 0.5% to 2% are the estimates which people are giving. I really don't know what is the right figure. And my guess is that maybe in the next year, or starting from Q2 of next year perhaps, the economy will start bouncing back And if we have actually moved to a digital payment system, we've moved to a system where there are some restrictions imposed by law on cash holdings by people. Because if you want to restrict corruption, I think it's important that nobody should have any large amounts of cash with him. I know it cuts into the privacy part and the right of people to do what they like, but I think in the overall larger good of the people and of the economy, some restrictions on cash holdings are required.
Dr. Jalan, two questions there. What is your assessment of a hit on growth, and when do you see a revival in consumption?
No. I mean, consumption, I mean, you have the first point about growth rate. I mean, I would just go by whatever the best estimate is the RBI has estimated just recently. So you take it as given, as it were. I mean, whether it is 0.5, 0.6, 0.7, we can't, touch our finger on that second digit, as it were. But yes, there is going to be an effect on growth. That is broadly agreed.
And what about consumption? By when do you see this revive?
I think so far as consumption is concerned, and normal consumption, even if you look at before demonetization also, the industrial growth was low. Now, when the consumption will pick up, etc., I mean, that would depend on how much money people have borrowed, how much people are pending, and so on. So I would say that let's give it a couple of months before we assess the total impact on different aspects of the economy of this particular move. At the moment, it's hard to say when will consumption rebound.
I'm not getting a definitive answer out of all of you, and so Swami, I urge you to be candid here. The RBI governor and his team just 3 days back, in fact 2 days back, said that the impact of demonetization is going to be transitory on headline growth numbers. You essentially agree with that argument?
Actually, nobody knows, including the RBI governor, exactly how things are going to play out. He has put a reasonably optimistic spin on it. It's plausible. I think equally plausibly you could argue that the hit will be much more. Particularly the hit will be much more if you take into account the fact that because of demonetization, there is a good chance that GST is off the rails. Certainly, Mr. Amit Mitra of West Bengal has said that, we can't take two whammies, GST as well as demonetization. It's a kind of excuse of saying, I am not going to allow you to go ahead on GST. And if the government lacks the votes in the GST Council, and that doesn't happen, that is a negative that needs to be added to all the existing negatives. So as far as the economy is concerned, this quarter and the next quarter, I think, are definitely adversely affected. The auto industry of Mr. Bhargava, the advertising industry, which affects the Times of India and the media, seriously affected, FMCG. So, the effect is very substantial, I would say, this quarter and maybe next quarter. Beyond, as I said, it depends on whether there is a fiscal stimulus that comes in the budget, maybe by putting money in Jan Dhan accounts, and we will see. However, there is a separate issue of, this is surely aimed at the UP election also. Now, out there we have a paradoxical situation where the big vote bank of the BJP has been the trader unorganized sector community. The very sector that has been regarded as the traditional vote bank of the BJP is precisely the one that has been really hard hit by this crackdown on the cash holdings, on cash transactions. How will that play out? My personal bet is that even though the trading community has been hit, they will still stick with Modi because they don't think they will get a better deal from anywhere else. And if that is the case, then politically, perhaps he does come out on top. But as I said, so many things yet to be worked out, yet to be seen. I think we need to wait at least till the end of December and then judge the situation at that point.
Sadanand, it's a fact that you can't divorce politics and economy at this stage. It was obviously a political discussion which has had economic consequences as well. Are you somebody who's going to divorce the growth argument from just the next 2 quarters? Or like Swami, you also believe that the many fallouts of it, which may perhaps be that the GST may be derailed altogether, and we're already seeing a lot of hurdles in the council itself, Do you believe this is going to be an obvious fallout of moves like this, and which is why the impact on growth?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Swami's comments earlier. We don't know. We know for sure that this has had severe negative consequences in this quarter. We know that this has not been a positive impact on the economy. What we don't know is just how negative. Is this a grazing blow or is this a severe blow? I'd also like to sort of bring to attention the reputational costs of this. Dr. Jalan pointed out that the reputation of the rupee has taken a bruising. I would say that the reputation of India as a stable economy that is run on predictable lines has also taken a bruising. This is a highly unusual decision, and in fact, I sometimes, and in this discussion, I feel as though I've dropped through a wormhole and emerged in an alternative universe where we're discussing this as though this is normal. It is highly abnormal to make a decision that targets 86% of the cash in a well-functioning economy. This is the sort of thing that has happened in countries that are in crisis, places like Zimbabwe, places like Argentina in crisis, places in the dying days of the Soviet Union. So it's a very unusual decision, and I think that when this is viewed from outside India, this does raise questions about how economic policy is being made in Asia's third largest economy.
Actually, that's a very valid point that you're talking about, and I'm going to take that forward in just a bit. What was the big rationale to do so? We weren't facing the wall. We weren't put against a wall. We weren't put against in a corner. Why in peace times did you have to make that decision? But I'm going to come to that, all of that in just a bit. But I just want to finish the consumption theme. And Mr. Bhargav, because, and I'm not just quoting out of thin air. I mean, if you see November consumption on FMCG down 22.7%. Consumer durable sales down 50%, eating out down 42%. I mean, we are quoting numbers here. Is the hit on consumption more driven, Mr. Bhargav, according to you, by the sentiment because people just don't want to part with that cash, or is this so much a real cash crunch? And when do you see this really bounce back?
No, I can't predict accurately when it will bounce back. It may be 3 months, it may be 6 months. But at the moment, part of the crippling effect is because people do not have enough cash to spend on a lot of things, and therefore they're cutting back on cash expenditures. I think where people have put in their digital payment systems and learn how to use it, that's happening. But I think it'll take time for people to change from the conventional cash-based economy to a digital payment economy. I think well-to-do, well-educated people are themselves very, very reluctant to use digital payments. They still have the old habits of paying by cash. And, people at the ages of 50 and 60 don't find it so easy to change their habits from cash to going on a computer or a smartphone or something and making payments.
You're actually prompting me to the next leg of this discussion, which is digital, and are there enough incentives? I'm going to touch upon that in just a bit. But Dr. Rajiv Kumar, you were far more optimistic on this whole exercise when we began this discussion. I'm wondering if you still hold on to that optimism given the points that some of our panelists here are raising. Did we underestimate the impact of consumption being crippled? When this whole exercise began, people thought this is just a blip and things will bounce back. How soon do we see those things bounce back?
As I said earlier, Supriya, these numbers that you've quoted actually are in some sense from the supply side, which are the numbers given out by the businesses that have been affected. But whether these numbers were a part of the official statistics is anybody's guess. Because if we assume that a large part of this was paid in cash earlier, and therefore somehow was escaping the official statistics, then it will not be. But it will not be seen in the official statistics. But clearly the demand has been affected, and the demand in some other sectors like real estate, etc., has also been affected, and some tourism would have been affected. And I think it will start bouncing back in the beginning of the next year. So 2 months of an impact, which is the third quarter, could see a drop in economic activity. We'll see a drop in economic activity. But as somebody said this morning, I read in the newspaper that everybody should be expecting a very sharp V-shaped recovery in the fourth quarter and then going forward.
Rajiv Anand, you're the banker on the show, and you said there's been a many-fold increase in terms of people going digital. Initially, consumption did take a hit, and I think it's Atul Sobti that Dr. Kumar is quoting here in today's Economic Times saying there's a V-shaped recovery. But by when do you see consumption really turn digital? I know there are lots of incentives. I keep getting mailers from my banks about, going digital. But when do you see people make that switch? It's also a change in habit, isn't it?
Let me give you a, you spoke about a few numbers in other industries. Let me give you a equivalent in terms of our retail lending business. One of the things that we track on a month-on-month basis is the number of inquiries to the bureau, which is the credit bureaus. And what we saw was that there was a significant drop in the first 1 week between November 8th to 15th. That was down almost 30% on a month-on-month basis. That number has improved significantly, although it still continues to be negative. Now it's down, only about 10 to 12% when I last saw. So clearly, I think there was a bit of a shock to the industry in terms of retail lending. But I think we are beginning to see normalization. I think in some of the so for example, autos and on the real estate side, what we hear from our partners is that footfalls and inquiries have not come down, but there is a bit of a wait and watch to see how things pan out as we go forward. So clearly there is interest, but there is uncertainty in terms of how things are going to pan out over the next 3 to 6 months. And once that uncertainty begins to go away, some of these inquiries will convert into sales.
I'm sure it will, but because the government is incentivizing digital and those 11-point programs that the finance minister announced just 24 hours back, Mr. Anand, will it be easy to change habits?
I think even within the sort of the economy of let's say the large metros, the adoption of digital is not sort of anywhere near 100%. So I think even these customers will continue to sort of push towards greater use of debit cards, greater use of digital money. And I think there is, like I mentioned, there is a percolation of that into the informal sector, and this is not just a metro story. We are seeing particularly within our sort of rural branches in terms of some of the businesses that we are doing in agri and microfinance. There too we are seeing the adoption, although of a much lower base. We are seeing adoption of digital money. Incentives, I think we've already seen the government doing something around incentives. There's a whole slew of incentives that have been given to both the merchants as well as the customer to go digital. And I do believe that this incentivization, the route that the government has taken, I think the government is certainly going to take this forward even further, and we will perhaps see more in the days to come and even in the budget in February.
Dr. Kumar, you agree with that the government is trying to incentivize digital payments, quarter of a percentage point discount here, 0.75% there, a 10% discount, some life insurance SOPs. Is that going to be enough to make people switch from cash to digital? I mean, people in India find it easier to deal with cash, and which is why 90% of all our transactions are in cash.
Well, these will help, surely help, of course, and they are the right signals to be given. And incentives to whatever, howsoever small they might be, do change behavioral patterns. But I think the most important one is the clear signal that the government has given that everybody who now deals in a cash economy bears a much higher risk in doing so. And I think that's the strong signal that's gone out, and to me will imply that the 40% of the parallel economy, which was corroding, as it were, the entire sort of system and engendering a systemic corruption in our society, that will become much smaller as we go forward, and that will be a huge gain. And I don't think people are beginning to appreciate the kind of impact this move will have on curbing the illicit, illegal, black and parallel economy transactions in our country.
All right. Swami, I want you to just come in on that. You know, there seems to be this obsession right now in India, in the public discourse, that to be cashless is the way to be. But is that a fair obsession to have? I mean, the only cashless economy perhaps is Sweden. It's totally internet connected. America isn't cashless. Japan isn't cashless. Why is India so obsessed? I mean, why are we demonizing cash at one level? Swami?
I saw an estimate by Vasudevan, the head of Equitas, the small bank. He said they had done a survey in the retailers. Only 2% of retailers in India have point of sale machines. So even if you quadruple that, you're going from 2% to only 8%, and 92% would still be cash. So while I welcome the shift towards the digital society, please let's be clear that even if you go at quite a rapid pace, we are going to be in an overwhelmingly cash-based society for a long time to come. This thing is not going to happen in 2 years, it's not going to happen in 4 years. It would play out over a very long period. And I think the same point has to be taken into account when we measure the extent of dislocation that we are seeing just now. It is overwhelmingly cash. So the dislocation is large, the shift to digital is necessary, will happen. But given the very, very low base from where we are starting, it is going to be a long time before this becomes the bulk of the economy. I also need to add that in my view, I don't see that this demonetization has the slightest impact on the generation of fresh black money. I mean, what is black money as a flow? It merely means, I mean, it's not stamped on a currency note, whether it's white or black. I pay the butcher pays the baker pays the candlestick maker. Those guys in the chain who declare their income and pay tax, for them it's white. For those who don't, it's black. It's a kind of seamless thing, which is white, black, white, black. Mere demonetization does not change that. We require a huge amount of follow-up work on trying to match transactions. Now, mind you, on this, the positive story is that this particular exercise did start in Chidambaram's time. It started in the Congress's time and is continuing. A proper IT backbone is being built up, which can then seamlessly match different kinds of transactions to reveal what is suspicious. For instance, value addition. Value addition is nothing but income. So if there is somebody paying VAT, he should be paying an equivalent amount of income tax as well. Right now there is no way of matching. We need to get to a system where our income tax systems are so digitally empowered that they are able to trace and immediately send notices to people with an obvious mismatch. On top of that, we need a huge overhaul of our police judicial system, which today seems incapable of convicting anybody beyond appeals, even if you catch a guy red-handed. I mean, there is the real follow-up action doesn't take place. So as I said, yes, it would be desirable to get rid of black money. It's not going to be done just by demonetization. You have to, on the one hand, build this IT backbone and algorithms to do automatic matching. And secondly, you must have a reform of the police judicial system so that the guilty are actually caught and punished in a reasonably brief period of time.
I'll come to tax and whether this is going to unleash yet another wave of tax terror in the country in just a while, and I'm going to ask questions to all of you. But Sadanand, I want you to come in on that from a global insider's perspective, and that's what I keep calling you all the time. Do you believe the debate is misplaced? I mean, you know, it's almost like a fad to say I'm digitally connected today, I'm going to be cashless. Are we a little detached from the ground realities, like Swami was pointing out there? It's not going to happen in a year, 2 years, 3 years' time. We will predominantly be a cash economy. Shouldn't policymakers who are pushing this entire initiative make their peace with the fact? Because it's one thing to say that people like you and me can go plastic, but what about the informal economy? I mean, that constitutes the backbone of your economic system, and that can't go cashless overnight.
No, I agree with you absolutely, and I find this whole fetishization of technology as some kind of silver bullet quite fascinating. Now, first of all, look at the numbers that Swami raised. The penetration is very low. Look at the fact also that your regular credit card experiences. I live in Washington D.C. I spend a lot of time in India. My experience of using a credit card in India in places like Delhi and Bangalore and Mumbai is quite dramatically different. No one goes to a store in the US, for instance, and is told by the storekeeper that they have to pay 2.5% extra or something if they want to use a credit card. That happens to me all the time in India. I go to stores where people say that, sorry, the credit card machine is broken, or it's down, or the line isn't working. So even in the big cities, there are problems with this. Just imagine what it's like in the rest of the country. That's one point. The second point is that everybody is not going to adapt to this immediately. Some people will, some people won't. My parents who are watching this show are highly educated people. They can barely find their way around a smartphone. I hope they won't mind telling your audience this. So the idea that everyone is going to magically going to be jumping onto their smartphones and becoming Swedes does strike me as a little bit far-fetched.
Spilling family secrets on national television. I wonder if you're going to get dinner tonight. But I will keep on with that discussion and ask Mr. Bhargava there. You have customers both in the formal and the informal economy. Are we making a tad too much about shifting to digital? I mean, what about the informal economy? Like Sadanand was pointing out, there are a lot of our people, and I consider myself tech savvy and I'm going to make another candid admission. My folks also find it very difficult to navigate through a smartphone, and here you are. Am I expecting people in the informal economy, my barber, my butcher, to all go on smartphones and start conducting through Paytms? I mean, isn't that expecting too much of our people? And do we have the infrastructure is also the big question.
A lot
so
of the
informal economy. Sorry, go ahead.
Digitize. I was at a golf club. Every caddy there has a bank account, has a Paytm downloaded on his phone with an e-wallet. The neighboring small shops here in Noida where I live, people have started getting Paytm and putting in swipe machines. So I think the informal economy is more willing to digitize than many of our formal economy and large people are willing to digitize.
I think you're just looking with more tech-savvy people than some of us here are. But Dr. Rajiv Kumar, when do you see the informal economy? And are you also as optimistic like Mr. Bhargava that the informal economy is perhaps more willing to brace digitization than the formal economy? And because if the informal economy is not going to brace this move, it will perhaps be an exercise in futility, would it not?
I think it's best to maybe talk about some tangible examples. The real estate sector in many parts of the country is notorious for its cash transactions and the kind of cash, the percentage of cash involved in doing the transactions in that business, whether you're buying a new house or selling an old one, etc., etc. Now here, I'm sure given the signal that have been given out by the government, given the greater activity on part of the CBDT, etc., the proportion of cash in real estate transactions is bound to come down quite rapidly and quite soon. So that what you might therefore see is a drop in real estate prices, and therefore better availability for the real and genuine homeowners, rather than it remaining a haven for speculative demand and creating the bubbles that we have all got used to, but which should not be there given the PE ratios, given the sort of price to rental ratios which are miserable in this country. So I think it will have a major impact on several sectors where cash was dominant, and quite soon too.
So let's get in the banker on this show and let's look at life beyond this demonetization, and we expect normalcy to return. Mr. Anand, when will we see things return to pre-November 8th this year? When can we expect caps on withdrawal to be hiked? When do we expect normal banking transactions? When can I get enough money in my wallet? When can I actually go there and get money when I want to and not queue up instead?
So I think, Supriya, you've got to look at that in a couple of contexts. I think one is, like I just mentioned, the amount of new currency that needs to come into the system is coming in at a fairly fast clip, and I think that will address some of the issues as we go forward. We are also seeing a huge shift towards digital payments. the use of our credit cards, use of POS terminals, use of our mobile banking, internet banking, and of course Access Pay, which is our UPI app, we are seeing multifold increases. And so therefore, for example, this month I've actually paid my Doodhwala and my Istriwala digitally. So he brought his account details, and I've transferred money to him digitally. And so therefore the acceptance of digital payments is increasing rapidly. And so therefore the need for money, need for physical cash in a sense is also reducing. And so therefore I think a combination of new money coming into the system, increased usage of digital payments is going to ensure that we have a faster ride towards normalcy.
I'm just wondering if you share a neighborhood with Mr. Bhargava, there his caddies have Paytms, your Doodhwala has Paytms, you perhaps live in very posh areas, gentlemen. But Bimal Jalan, as the former RBI governor, when do you see normalcy return? Because I have a few questions on RBI and I'm going to take them all with you. But first up, when do you see normalcy return on this matter?
A couple of months, I think. I mean, absolutely, it seems. I mean, it has been a 1 month episode, and let's give it a couple of months. After that, we'll be able to assess very closely as to what the overall impact has been, because a number of commentators, I am sure, including many of them in the media, have said that the amount of reduction in total black money won't be all that high, because this money would be laundered, some would flow out, and so on and so forth. And some people put it in gold and jewelry. So let us see what happens 2 months down the road, but I am sure that in a couple of months everything will be back to normal.
Dr. Jalan, do you believe the government and the RBI could have been better prepared and ensured more money supply in the economy, and if they've been blamed for it? I'm not asking you a question out of the blue. I hope you're not going to be diplomatic and answer this more correctly for me.
Of that there is no doubt. I mean that if you look at it, I mean the fact that the banks run out of money to replace, I mean how do you manage it? I mean if you say that replace your notes up to this point and the banks don't have the money, and then there are huge queues and nobody had the information, so ATMs have become exhausted of money, so naturally people have suffered. And then what you mentioned about the fact that 86% or so, I mean they are using mainly cash, that's also a very important issue, particularly in rural areas and small income groups, for example. So yes, I mean it hasn't, and we haven't focused on all that. I mean having a cashless economy in India is not a realistic goal, as you know.
Swami and Sadanand, the questions have to also be answered for RBI, and I must begin with Sadanand on this one. There is this whole debate about a special dividend from the RBI. If money gets extinguished, it becomes an asset. Why should it not be transferred to the government? Of course, a change of law notwithstanding. Dr. Jalan earlier raised the point about the reputation of the rupee being hurt. And you kind of seem to share that sentiment. It's not just the reputation of the rupee, but India as a sovereign also beginning to be hurt. Is the credibility of India's central bank at risk as we speak?
I think it's certainly been hurt. I think that if they had gotten out ahead with much better and clearer communication, and if the implementation of this, I mean, quite apart from whether one agrees with the policy or not, I'm not a big fan of the policy itself, but I think no reasonable person can argue that this has been well implemented. So I think part of the implementation problems, the lack of communication, coming just a few months after this bruising battle with a lot of international media coverage, the Raghuram Rajan affair, I think it has compounded the sense that the RBI is perhaps not as solid and as competent an institution as some of us would have liked to believe.
Swami, you agree with that? The RBI could have been more at the forefront of communicating, and are you surprised that the large part of the communication has really been done by New Delhi and not by Mint Street? And it should have been the other way around. They are the monetary authority. It was almost a script written in New Delhi. That's how the RBI board met. The decision was conveyed. And then they chose to keep conspicuously silent over this entire matter. So if Raghuram Rajan was being blamed to speak too much, Urjit Patel needs to be blamed to speak nothing at all.
Well, yes, on the internet, I think you see there are these large posters saying missing Urjit Patel, not seen since November 9th, come home, all's forgiven, we miss you, guy. So, these kinds of posters were being posted because Urjit Patel was so conspicuous by his absence in terms of communication at a time when everybody was looking to the RBI. The story went around that this was sprung as a surprise on the RBI. However, at that last monetary policy meeting, Urjit Patel seems to have said that no, the RBI was in the loop and this was a thought out decision. I mean, if it really was a thought out decision, then I am afraid the quality of thinking was extremely substandard because the implementation has been so third rate. So many things should have been thought out, the ATM calibration, the amount of notes to be printed in it. Really very, very, very serious bungling. So yes, I would say the RBI can be faulted at the conceptual level and at the implementation level, both. And it does look as though on this particular occasion, it has not been the kind of strong independent body that it was under Raghuram Rajan.
All right, not a very strong body as it was under Raghuram Rajan, but Bimal Jalan, if I may come to you, and this question really has to do with the communication at the RBI, and we've had many chats on how much and how little should RBI communicate, but do you believe it's perhaps been a little too silent on this matter, and as a former RBI governor, you perhaps would have wanted the Mint Street bosses to talk a little more, to be more in the limelight?
No, but that is, you see, who takes the lead is not the issue. The lead is, in the sense that this is a government policy and the government has taken the lead. But the more important part that you have raised is, why is RBI silent? Now, the governor has spoken recently, he has answered many questions and so on and so forth. But, I can't explain this issue about silence, not silence, how much you talk, how much you don't talk. It depends on what the governor thinks is the right thing to say. So don't get on to that one, okay?
All right, don't get on to that and let the governor be silent. But Rajiv Anand, the many flip-flops, if you look at it from the government's point of view, they believe this was war room approach. We were reacting to situation as it was unfolding on the ground. Critics, both in the opposition and economic commentators on this show, have said there was a lot of flip-flop, could have been better planned. Do you believe a lot of the changes added to the unnecessary panic that was already there in the system, where people feared, is my money going to come back to me? Is the money that is with me, will it be legitimate? Am I going to get my currency back? Did all these changes really add to the unnecessary panic there was?
I think you've got to sort of recognize the fact that this is an unprecedented event, and I think nobody could have thought through every single scenario. So therefore, in that sense, both the regulators and the government, have been working, very hard to ensure that the discomforture to the larger community is mitigated. And I think the banking sector has worked very closely with both the government as well as RBI to ensure swift and efficient execution.
As a banker on the show, I must ask you a question, and I urge you to be candid here. The whole exercise in the banks for the last 1 year, 1.5 years, and the discourse had been to get rid of the toxic assets, to defocus from the, to focus on the NPAs, to push credit. Do you believe demonetization in some way has made you defocus from that, to defocus from NPA management, to defocus from credit offtake, and instead every banker is just sitting on the teller, trying to exchange, trying to, take deposits, put those curves in withdrawals? Has that been a negative consequence of this move?
So I think there is adequate bandwidth, within the bank. Remember that demonetization, by and large, is a branch banking, sort of retail bank phenomenon where we are seeing, we've got to manage our customers within the branches. Our corporate bank colleagues, continue to stay focused on, some of the issues that they mentioned. So I think you've got to look at it in terms of the amount of bandwidth that we have across the bank. And so therefore, the point I'm making to you is that demonetization is to a large extent on a day-to-day basis a retail bank phenomenon, and doesn't impact the corporate bank that much, other than the fact that yes, some of our corporates that we do business with may be impacted.
So Swami and Sadanand and each one of you, we are going to be wrapping this show, and so I'm going to ask one last round of questions to each one of you. Swami, do you believe the fear of the tax man being unleashed on the state is perhaps the right one? A lot of people fear that I put my legitimate money in my account, but who knows, I may get a notice next, and it doesn't take an erudite economist like you to make people understand that the hotbed of corruption is the last man standing in the tax department.
I can only repeat that, I think I saw one news item of some official in Gujarat was caught attempting to give a new bribe of 3 lakh rupees in brand new 2000 rupee notes. To me, that particular report summed up, what does demonetization have to do with bribery or corruption? If I was demanding bribes earlier in different kinds of notes, I will now demand them in new notes. I'd also theorized that because of the bulk and the other issues, perhaps there will be a shift to gold coins. When I was in Bombay, I asked Jamal Maklai, I said, do you think that there's going to be a shift in bribery into gold coins? He looks at me and said, it's already been happening for 2 years. Over and above which, I just see, I don't know that there's necessarily a connection, but the November trade figures show a significant increase in gold imports. I don't know whether it's because of this. I merely want to, mere demonetization by itself will not stop bribery, will not stop black money. That then requires all the other reforms I referred to earlier, reform of the tax system, or probably of the political financing, certainly of the police judicial system, bringing down stamp duty to reasonable rates. A huge number of other reforms have to be done if you want to get black money and corruption out. Demonetization has taken place. It must not be confused with the end of corruption.
Indeed, it cannot be construed with the end of corruption, because it's easier to bribe people with a 2000 rupee note than it was to pay somebody 500 currency notes there. But Mr. Bhargava, you essentially agree with me when I say that the tax man being unleashed and the state being unleashed almost on every citizen of this country, because that's the big fear that a lot of people who've put honest money in their banks today are kind of harboring and voicing.
See, the tax man is already unleashed on the common man. I think one of the things which everybody recognizes, including the government, is that the tax man and the tax system has to become much more customer friendly. And digitization, and if there is much less cash available, at least if somebody asks me for a bribe, I can say, look, I don't have more than 50,000 rupees in all which I can get in cash, so how do I pay you a bribe? Are you willing to take a bribe by check? Because that's the only way I can give you a bribe.
A bribe by check should be an innovative thing, and I hope that doesn't happen in India. But Mr. Rajiv Anand, as a banker, has it been difficult and challenging to keep the faith intact in the banking system? Because some of that, whether you like it or not, has indeed been eroded.
I don't think there's an issue as far as the trust and faith of the banking system is concerned. But I think what has clearly changed is that the cost of doing business in cash in this country has gone up permanently. And so therefore that realization is beginning to hit sort of more and more people as we go forward. And that will mean that the way that you've been living your lives in earning in cash, spending in cash, and may not necessarily be sort of paying your taxes in between, or building businesses which are primarily being dependent on sort of tax arbitrages, etc. I think those days are are perhaps behind us, and I think that is I think a greater issue for people in those parts of the economy. As far as the banking sector is concerned, I think we have supported this initiative, and we will continue to do so in terms of sort of helping the customers through up to 30th of December, and this big drive towards digital payments and digital banking in the months and years to come.
Sadanand Dhume, will let you have the last word in this edition of the very special show Cash 22. Talking about tax being eroded, talking about trust being eroded, what will be your metric of success? What is it that this whole exercise will have to do to make you say it's been a successful or a reasonably well done exercise by the 31st of March 2017?
I think that ship has sailed. I think this is a destructive policy that has been extremely poorly implemented. What we should be looking for are other policies that mitigate this impact, and those are regular policies of liberalization of the kinds of things we've been talking about for a long time. To the question of taxes, I have to say that your point is absolutely valid. This is one of the key weaknesses, I think, in how the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister see what they have. They seem to think that the tax officials they're working with are, the most clean, most efficient, most honest people on the planet. Whereas if you talk to any ordinary Indian, you know that the truth is actually quite the opposite. And so this idea that you can put in place these policies, presuming that you have a perfect instrument in your command, when in fact you have a very highly flawed instrument in your command, I think is one of the key drawbacks of the way they've gone about this.
Indeed, that's one of the key drawbacks. But thank you very much, Swaminathan Aiyar, Sadanand Dhume, Dr. Bimal Jalan, Dr. Rajiv Kumar, R.C. Bhargava, and Mr. Rajiv Anand for sharing your thoughts on 1 month of demonetization and where does India stand amidst it all. Thanks very much indeed, viewers, for tuning in.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/ETNow and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at ETNowLive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/user/ETNow.